Welcome. I'm doing the video today with the fan on. It's just way too hot here, so unfortunately the slightly poorer viewing experience of this is absolutely necessary in terms of stopping myself from melting. So I apologise for the background noise you may be able to pick up during this video. I'll continue to try and talk over the top of it as best as possible, so you don't have to listen to the hum of the fan in the background. So, something I want to bring out first of all, and, it's not, I guess not necessarily kind of like clout claiming, but it is something I think that is, worth bringing up because it does tie in my overall market thoughts here, which is, looking at this here, which is the original discussion here. So, this is something that I wrote on the 10th. So what are we now? 10 days ago. Again, I spoke about the way that the conditions were aligning in terms of the way the picture on alts was and the way the picture on BTC was. So, the BTC daily RSI below the 50 level, rejecting and rotating to the downside. The weekly chart not closing above 34,000, which was that key thing that I tweeted about, right? Which is, we didn't close above 34,600. The following week we retested that as resistance, and this week we've started to break down. The 12 hours showing the break in structure and resumption of the downtrend, so we had that confluence, and then alts, DeFi rallies making their way towards higher time frame resistance regions, Aave at 305 for example. And then the NFT side of things, when we saw the NFT markets pop off and we saw AXS get overextended and really, push itself and extend it to a great degree. So we had that set of confluence. And so I don't think it should be a major surprise in what we're seeing in the market right now in terms of larger sell-offs across the board. Very red day for alts again. BTC doing okay at 4% down on the day, and obviously alts therefore suffering to a greater extent, which is why we would always have a preference on shorting alts over shorting BTC. Very rare instances when BTC tends to impulse down heavily, and not even in those situations really that BTC is ever going to outperform shorting an alt. So when you're looking for short setups, it's the reason that I've really not looked at BTC to a huge degree. I know other people in the group like UB for example will focus a little bit more on BTC, whereas my focus is on alts and where I can try and get the most value from some of the short side alt plays. So really there's not a lot to cover in terms of the overall market. The overall market looks like a piece of shit, and now we just have to deal with the fact that we've got lots of red and we have to plan accordingly. One thing I would say is that this is absolutely not an opportunity of buying the dip. We take a look at the higher time frame on BTC here, and we can see the daily's still got plenty of opportunity to rotate to the downside. So let's get the Coinbase chart here. We've got plenty of opportunity here to rotate to the downside and continue with an impulsive leg, and we know that that 24k region is still the one that really we're interested in down here. This is still really the region that if we do get very strong impulse that we would like to see tagged into. Now the other area that we know that we usually get a reaction, and we may see again this time, is here. Okay, so breaking down below the last low has always caused a strong reaction. So when this initial low over here was taken, obviously that was the time that we saw the huge rally in BTC as a result of that. So I think we just need to be aware of what happens when 28,800 is taken, and I think it is probably an inevitability at this point. I would be surprised if that low isn't taken out, and then we'll see the reaction from there. If we get something like a strong hourly divergence into that region, and we're developing an hourly div at the moment on BTC down here, then that is something that we could potentially look at trying to position around this 28,800 level, and then we just be riding this back up then to some areas of interest for us, from the breakdowns. So that's all we're looking for right now. Overall market looks poor, so we'll talk about the positions that we are in, which is BNB and Tomo. So we'll start off with BNB. Like pretty simple trade opportunity. We'll take the Binance chart for a second just to give us the overview of the levels, and then we'll go back to where the messier data is. So the 3-day time frame here is really what we care about, which basically shows the fact that what we are doing here is number one, aggressively selling off, but rejecting from this 324 level. And that was really the key trigger for me in terms of trying to assess where I wanted to kind of have that short bias originate from, and it all comes around this 324 level. So the rejection and the inability to close above the 324 is a major sign that BNB is probably going to end up rejecting this level. So we were looking for, you know, a few days around this consolidation region here, and we were just looking for the impulse. When are we going to start to see kind of a breakdown point through here? We took one opportunity, got stopped out for 0.4%, which was pretty decent way of managing the risk on the trade. And then obviously eventually then started to see the impulse to the downside and that rotation in the RSI. And once again, we can see another example here in line with a recent video where we just reject the 50. Okay, so we get that 50 level here in the consolidation, then we just end up rotating to the downside. Alright, so just not a good look for BNB at all. And then again, now BNB has extended a little bit further than other things have. So we can see here BNB is now sitting at a daily support level here. And what we may get in all of these markets is we may get something that ends up looking like this. You know, so we can see this, you know, this rounding effect, you know, the bouncing ball effect here of just the lower bounces against the support region. And so we could end up rallying from this region and giving ourselves a relief, and then obviously looking to position short again once we start tagging back into the 300s on the upside. For now, let's go back to the one with the targets on, and we can just quickly discuss the reasons behind the targets here. So first of all, you know, the first region, you know, really is kind of a target point was getting a breakdown through here, right? Getting a breakdown through this 290, because that gives us a bit more breathing space now in terms of we would never expect BNB to recover past this 292 mark. That should be, if we get the higher time frame rotation from this support, that should be about where we bounce to, and that would represent a significant bounce in BNB from this point. So we're already, you know, roughly 15% down on this, which is great. And then obviously the bounce from the lows, if we were to get there, would be another 15% recovery. So, you know, that's the sort of bounce we'd be looking to try and short. Target region, this target region here on the daily. Now I chose the 252 level, you know, which I've taken some off anyway because we're close enough, and I'm not going to kind of hold it that, you know, at gunpoint to I've got to only take profit at 252. This is close enough, right? We're $4 off. This is close enough. The reason that level is chosen is when we look at the daily support region through here, we can see that we actually tend to impulse quite heavily through the region before we close back above. So all we're doing here is trying to play into any additional value we can slightly squeeze from the position in getting through this support level. So we're just looking to try and squeeze an extra few dollars on the BNB trade by pushing into the extension or the drive lower. That's all we're really looking at doing at a point like this. So for now, the BNB position, you know, looking fine, and this is a swing position, so this is something that, you know, I plan on keeping open for a good length of time, but I probably will end up skimming some more off this position if we get an hourly divergence that locks in down here. And the reason being is that the hourly div I wouldn't expect to be overly strong in these market conditions, because the market is quite aggressive to the downside, so I really wouldn't expect it to be, you know, like hugely successful. But I think that it is definitely worth, you know, making sure that we are prepared for any resolution to the upside. So what we don't want to do is, you know, stubbornly sit there and say, well, you know, I don't think it's going to bounce, or I don't think it's going to bounce strongly, and then it ends up doing that 16% bounce and it all started with an hourly bull div. Right? We want to make sure that we're taking profit off sooner and making sure that we're locking in our money, and then look, we can look at changing that up in the future and re-adding to that position if we get a retest. There's nothing wrong with that. So at the moment I'm currently 60% in the position, and probably another 10% off, you know, reduce it to half size if we lock in an hourly bull div here. I think would be a suitable option. You know, this is already a nice sell-off. Next one is Tomo, and again I'll just give my thought process around Tomo. So this is a trade that I posted last night after Tomo basically started acting super awkwardly around this high. So what we saw on lower time frame for Tomo was that Tomo actually just broke through this resistance level here, and that was unusual because BTC was not in a good position. BTC had pushed earlier than Tomo to the upside, and then it had that rejection. So anybody that was trading it last night, we broke upwards from the daily open, and once we broke upwards and looked as though it was a pretty good recovery attempt, we very quickly reversed that candle. Now Tomo then took the opportunity to move. So it was like this slight delay. You see here, this was at 1:30, right? This is like this slight delay. And what happened then is the rejection here, and this is a support and resistance level, and then this candle here. So immediately above this level, faked out the break here, and then returned underneath. And that was in line then with the pressure on BTC on the sell side. And so this was the opportunity to dive into this position. Now, it wasn't just taken from this time frame here on the 15-minute. This certainly gave me the entry point. But really it stems from this 12-hour view here. And what we can see for Tomo, I'm just going to hide this. What we can see from Tomo here is two things. Number one is like a huge selling presence above 250. You know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 12-hour candles above 250 and it can't close. Like, look at the sell pressure here. And what we also did through this region, which is relatively interesting, is we kept on taking the high. So every one of these wicks took the high and died. Took the high and died. Took the high and died. Right, in every single one of those situations. And so for me, this was a market that I had my eye on shorting. And I already tried this once and came out of the position early and got back in on the signal last night. We can also see here that this was diverging all the way up. So all of this region through here was a divergence. And it's not a hidden bull div, it's a normal divergence. So we can see each of the peaks is losing momentum. Every single high that's created is losing momentum. 4 times. Right? 4 times that happened. Now in strong markets, that's a rare situation. In strong, fundamentally strong markets, this breaks upwards. This doesn't happen. Right? This divergence doesn't happen. Each peak makes a higher high because the momentum is there to continue driving the market. So when we see a picture like this, it's the same on AXS. When we see a picture like this, we get an impression that this market is actually weak and could be shorted. Right? This here shows us clearly each high is not being supported by momentum. It's weaker. And then this price action here, you know, basically looks like the top did on AXS in terms of just trying to drive out shorts. Because this is people who are either shorting early and getting stopped out, or this is people who understand that this is, you know, weak and are filling shorts up here. Right, who are selling above that 250 level. Now again, as the final bit of confluence for this, when we swap to a 3-day time frame, this actually looks really, really rough here for Tomo. So if we just simply take the structure, we've got our high here, our low here, our lower high here, and our lower low. So 3-day downtrend, okay, confirmed, downtrending on Tomo, and none of this price action means anything aside from the fact that this is now a lower high again. And so my expectations for Tomo are 175, which gets us back down here. And then depending on what the market conditions are looking like, you know, I could see this going down and making another lower low. You know, so that is coming back down to this area here under $1. And so we'll see what this looks like. I think the Tomo's in an interesting position because structurally, market structure-wise, the short is actually at the 3-day lower high. And if the market conditions are shitty and we continue trending down, then this is something I can just literally hold on to and just watch it die. But, you know, that's to come. For now, we've got a couple of take profits. One of them's already hit, which is, you know, fantastic. And, you know, aside from that, we're just going to be monitoring the market and seeing what happens. But, you know, pretty simple short opportunity, I think, from having a little bit of awareness of what the higher time frame picture is, and then utilizing that signal on the lower time frame of where Tomo was acting as this kind of anomaly in the market last night. It was 5% up at one point, and it did so quite aggressively. It was quite an aggressive 5% move up. And it was unusual for the market, and we can see that obviously quite clearly the 4-hour did not have an enjoyable close at all for Tomo. So that's it for now, right? Just be careful. Like, don't get distracted into fucking buy the dip zones. Any trades that you take to the long side, remember that you are dealing with an aggressive downtrending market on higher time frames and lower time frames. So it's not like you're playing into, you know, a higher time frame uptrend but a lower time frame downtrend. They are both downtrending. So any longs that you take, any longs that you see, the most important thing you can do is take profit aggressively. So we have to take profit early, because if the market does bounce, we have to take that opportunity to take our money out and to take our profit, versus sitting there stubbornly thinking that we've caught the absolute, kind of macro bottom of a fresh bull cycle. Right, so be sensible in the way that you take profit. All right. So everybody enjoy the rest of the day. I'm going to go get out of the sweatbox of an office and go relax. Enjoy.